The celestial map is carved in stone across the Egyptian desert. The ancient Egyptians were not just pyramid builders. They were master astronomers who hid profound cosmic secrets within their timeless monuments. You are about to discover how their entire civilization was orchestrated by the stars. We will uncover why the Great Pyramid points with impossible precision to the north, and what message the Sphinx might have been gazing at for millennia. This journey reveals a hidden layer of history, proving their world was a mirror of the heavens. How does looking at the stars change your view of the past? This cosmic blueprint was the very soul of their belief system. For the ancient Egyptians, their gods were not distant myths, they were the living sky. The sun was not merely a star, it was the god Ra sailing his solar boat across the heavens. Every sunset was a moment of peril, as the sky goddess Nut was said to swallow Ra each evening. He would then travel through the perilous underworld throughout the night, only to be born again from her body at dawn. This was not just a story to them, it was a daily reality that dictated the rhythm of life. Their entire calendar, with its 3 seasons of flood, growth, and harvest, was synchronized with the rising of the star Sirius, which heralded the life-giving Nile floods. The pharaoh himself was the linchpin in this cosmic order. He was not just a king, he was the living embodiment of the god Horus, the son of Osiris and Isis, whose own myth was written in the stars. His primary duty was to maintain Ma'at, the divine order of the universe, by performing rituals that mirrored the celestial cycles. If he failed, the sun might not rise, the Nile might not flood, and chaos would engulf the world. He was the essential bridge, the one human whose actions kept the earthly realm in perfect harmony with the heavens above. So the next time you see an image of a pharaoh, look beyond the gold and the power, and see a high priest of the cosmos, performing a sacred duty under the watchful eyes of the stars. Deep within the temple of Hathor at Dendera, a stunning secret lay hidden for centuries on the ceiling of a forgotten chapel. When French explorers first cleared the sand and rubble in the 19th century, they were met with a sight that defied their understanding of the ancient world. Carved into a massive sandstone slab was an intricate circular chart of the heavens, a breathtakingly detailed depiction of the night sky. This was the Dendera Zodiac, and its discovery sent shockwaves through the academic world. Scholars of the day argued fiercely, some insisting it must be a medieval forgery because its astronomical precision was simply too advanced for a civilization they believed was primitive. They could not accept that ancient Egyptians possessed such a sophisticated grasp of celestial mechanics, but the zodiac was genuine, a testament to their profound knowledge. At first glance, you can pick out constellations we still recognize today. There is Leo the lion and Taurus the bull, their forms echoing across millennia. Yet this is not simply our zodiac copied onto stone. Look closer and you will find uniquely Egyptian figures woven into the cosmic tapestry. A hippopotamus stands where the great bear should be, and a crocodile lurks in the celestial river. This was their sky, interpreted through their own mythology. The most astounding revelation, however, is what this map implies about their understanding of time itself. The arrangement of the constellations on the Dendera Zodiac accurately reflects a slow, grand cycle of the heavens, known as the precession of the equinoxes. This is a wobble in Earth's rotation that causes the position of the stars to shift imperceptibly over a cycle of nearly 26,000 years. The Egyptians were not just mapping the sky for a single night, they were encoding a timeline of cosmic ages into their temple, proving they saw the universe on a scale that still staggers the modern mind. While the Dendera Zodiac mapped the grand scale of cosmic ages, another, more intimate celestial technology was at work every single night. Scratched onto the inside lids of coffins and painted across the ceilings of elite tombs, you can find the world's oldest star clocks. These were not simple decorations, they were functional timepieces, and their mechanism was breathtakingly elegant. Egyptian astronomers divided the night sky into 36 small groups of stars, known as decans. Imagine each of these star groups as a single hand on a cosmic clock face. The key to telling time was observing a star's heliacal rising, which is the first day each year it becomes visible just before the sun comes up, after a period of being hidden by the sun's glare. Throughout the night, as one decan set, Another would rise, marking the passage of time with perfect regularity. Priests on duty in the temples would watch for the appearance of specific decans, like the bright star we call Sirius, known to them as Sopdet, or the constellation we know as Orion, which they saw as the gods saw. The rising of each new decan signaled the start of a new hour of the night. This system was so precise that it structured their entire calendar. The civil year was made up of 36 10-day weeks, with each week corresponding to the heliacal rising of one of the 36 decan stars. This meant that the star clocks did more than just tell priests when to perform the nightly rituals. They anchored the entire rhythm of Egyptian society to the slow, dependable turn of the galaxy. Every 10 days, a new star would herald a new week and a new chapter in the endless celestial story they were living. This cosmic clockwork, governed by the stars, found its most powerful earthly expression in the worship of the sun. The sun god Ra was not just a deity, he was the ultimate source of all power, both divine and political. The pharaoh was believed to be the living son of Ra, and this direct lineage legitimized his absolute rule over the entire kingdom. Every temple, every ritual, and every monument was, in a way, an extension of this solar cult, a daily reaffirmation that the king's power was as constant and life-giving as the sun itself. And the ultimate symbol of this power was the obelisk. We see them today as monolithic monuments of stone, but to the ancient Egyptians, they were something far more dynamic. An obelisk was a precision astronomical instrument carved from a single block of granite. Its purpose was to interact directly with its celestial counterpart, the sun. The shadow cast by its towering, four-sided form was a giant sundial, but its function was far more sacred than simply telling the time of day. On the equinoxes, the 2 days of the year when day and night are of equal length, the obelisk's shadow would fall in a perfectly straight line, east to west. This was a moment of perfect balance, a physical manifestation of the cosmic order of Maat that the pharaoh was sworn to uphold. During the solstices, the longest and shortest days of the year, the shadow's behavior would mark the sun's extreme northern and southern limits in the sky, tracking the great solar cycle. But the true magic happened at the very top. The pyramidion, the small pyramid that capped the obelisk, was often sheathed in a brilliant alloy of gold and silver called electrum. This material was chosen for its exceptional ability to reflect light. At the precise moment of dawn, the pyramidion would ignite, catching the very first ray of the sun and blazing with a light so intense it would have been visible across the entire city. At sunset, it would be the last thing to glow, holding onto the sun's light as the world below fell into darkness. This was not just a beautiful spectacle. It was a deliberate, engineered connection between the earth and the heavens. The obelisk was a lightning rod for solar power, a physical proof that the pharaoh, the son of Ra, could harness the sun itself and channel its divine energy directly into the heart of his kingdom. But this celestial precision was not confined to temples and obelisks. It was etched onto the very desert floor at Giza. In the 1990s, a researcher named Robert Bovell proposed a theory so audacious it divided the world of Egyptology. He suggested that the 3 great pyramids of Giza were not just tombs, but a perfect, intentional map of the stars in Orion's belt. The alignment is startlingly precise. Look at the 3 stars of the belt, El-Nitak, El-Nilayim, and Mintaka. They are not arranged in a straight line, but in a distinct, diagonal pattern, with the central star slightly offset. Now look at a plan of the Giza Plateau. The pyramids of Menkaure, Khafre, and Khufu mirror this celestial pattern with uncanny accuracy. Their positions on the ground match the positions of those 3 stars in the sky. Even the relative sizes of the pyramids seem to correspond to the relative brightness of the 3 stars. The Nile River, flowing beside the pyramids, was seen as a terrestrial reflection of the Milky Way, the great celestial river in the sky. Bovell argued this was no coincidence, but a deliberate act of sacred geography, a belief system known as above, so below, where the pharaohs built their eternal homes to mirror the eternal home of the gods in the heavens. This Orion Correlation Theory, however, ignited a firestorm of debate. Mainstream Egyptologists pointed out that while the alignment is visually compelling, the match is not mathematically perfect. They argue that the pyramids were built over a span of nearly a century, and such a long-term stellar plan would have been nearly impossible to execute with the precision claimed. They suggest the alignment could be a coincidence, or that the symbolic connection to Orion, while important, was not the literal blueprint for the entire plateau. Despite the controversy, the theory's power endures because it speaks to a grander vision. It proposes that the entire Giza complex is a single, unified message in stone, a secret code left by its builders declaring that their true destiny was not just in the sand, but among the stars. This celestial mirror at Giza points to a far more profound belief, the idea of a lost golden age the Egyptians called Zep Tepi, the first time. This was not a distant memory, but a foundational myth of a perfect, ordered world at the very dawn of creation, when the gods themselves walked the earth. According to their texts, this was the era when Osiris, the god of the afterlife and resurrection, ruled as the first king of Egypt, bringing civilization and divine order before his tragic murder and subsequent rebirth as the lord of the underworld. His soul was believed to reside eternally in the stars of the constellation we call Orion, so the pyramids were far more than tombs or even star maps. They were a desperate, monumental attempt to recreate the sacred geography of that first time here on Earth. By building the three pyramids to mirror the three stars of Orion's belt, the pharaohs were physically anchoring their own souls to the eternal, unchanging realm of the gods. They believed that upon death, the soul of the pharaoh would travel to the sky to merge with Osiris in Orion, achieving immortality by returning to the original, perfect state of the cosmos. This is the true meaning behind the Orion Correlation. It was a machine for resurrection, a stone launchpad aimed at the celestial home of a god. This belief system forces us to confront a tantalizing astronomical puzzle. The slow wobble in Earth's axis, known as precession, means the stars are not fixed in the sky. Over millennia, their positions slowly drift. If the Giza pyramids were built to perfectly mirror the stars of Orion's belt as they appeared in the sky during the 4th dynasty, around 2500 BCE, the match is close, but not exact. However, when astronomers run the celestial clock backwards, they find a period when the alignment was absolutely perfect. This moment, when the terrestrial Nile and its pyramids aligned flawlessly with the celestial Nile of the Milky Way and the stars of Orion, falls not in 2500 BCE, but in a much more remote era, around 10,500 BCE. This calculated date for the perfect celestial mirror is what fuels intense speculation. Could the Great Sphinx and the pyramids be far older than we have ever believed? Did the pharaohs of the 4th dynasty not build these structures from scratch, but merely restore and claim monuments that were already unimaginably ancient, monuments originally built to commemorate the true Zep Tepi? The alignment in that distant epoch is a ghost in the machine, a perfect echo from a time before history, challenging everything we think we know about the origins of civilization itself. This celestial clockwork had one star that outshone all others in its practical and spiritual importance. Sirius, the brightest star in our night sky, was not merely a light in the heavens for the Egyptians. It was Sopdet, a divine herald whose annual appearance was the most anticipated event of the entire year. After a 70-day period of invisibility, lost in the glare of the sun, Sirius would make its heliacal rising. This is the moment it becomes visible just above the eastern horizon for a fleeting instant before the sunrise washes it away. For the people watching the sky, this was a signal that triggered a wave of relief and celebration across the land. For that single brilliant star's return coincided, with stunning reliability, with the beginning of the Nile's annual inundation. The river would begin to swell, overflowing its banks and spreading rich, black silt across the parched fields. This was not a destructive flood, it was a life-giving miracle. The water and the fertile mud it carried would nourish the soil, making the desert bloom and ensuring a bountiful harvest that would feed the entire kingdom for the coming year. The entire Egyptian agricultural cycle, and thus their very survival, was synchronized to this one celestial event. The first day of the heliacal rising of Sirius, therefore, became the first day of the Egyptian New Year, a national rebirth tied directly to the cosmos. But the Egyptians did not see this as a simple act of nature. They wove it into the very fabric of their mythology. Sirius was personified as the goddess Sopdet, who was later merged with the most powerful mother goddess in their pantheon, Isis. The mythology is profound. Isis was the wife of Osiris, the murdered god-king, and the mother of Horus. Her tears of mourning for her lost husband were believed to be the cause of the Nile's flood. So when Sirius reappeared, it was Isis returning to the sky, her grief causing the river to rise and her magic bringing life back to the land of Egypt, just as she had magically reassembled and resurrected Osiris to conceive their son. Can you grasp the beautiful symmetry? The stars return, the rivers flood, and a goddess's sorrow were all seen as interconnected parts of a single, sacred event. This was the ultimate fusion of astronomy and faith, where watching a star was literally watching the actions of a god, and the fate of a civilization hung in the balance of that one perfect, celestial alignment. Yet this grand celestial clockwork was not just written in the stars and pyramids, it was also staring directly east, waiting for a single, perfect dawn. The Great Sphinx, this colossal lion with the head of a pharaoh, holds a secret in its unwavering gaze. For centuries, it was simply a magnificent mystery, but a compelling theory suggests it was built as a precise astronomical marker. On the morning of the spring equinox, the day of perfect balance between light and dark, if you stand directly in front of the Sphinx, you would witness the sun rise precisely between its two paws. This is no accident of orientation. It was a deliberate alignment, a moment where the sun god Ra was symbolically reborn directly from the body of the guardian of the horizon. This idea was given serious academic weight by astronomers like Virginia Trimble, who studied the site's astronomical potential. But this alignment leads to an even more profound mystery, one carved not in myth, but in the very stone of the monument itself. Geologists have pointed to the deep, weathered fissures covering the Sphinx's body and the enclosure walls that surround it. This pattern of erosion, they argue, is not consistent with wind and sand, the forces that shaped the nearby pyramids. Instead, it matches the distinctive marks left by heavy, prolonged rainfall, the kind of water erosion that would have required a climate vastly different from the arid desert of Egypt for the last several thousand years. This geological evidence suggests the Sphinx could be far older than its traditional dating of around 2500 BCE, potentially originating in a time when the Sahara was a green savanna, a period that ended around 7000 BCE or even earlier. This pushes the Sphinx's origin back into a foggy, prehistoric era, and this is where the astronomy and the geology converge into a stunning symbolic possibility. If the Sphinx is a lion, and it is aligned to the equinox, then what was happening in the sky during that distant, wetter epoch? Due to the precession of the equinoxes, the constellation that rose directly behind the sun on the spring equinox slowly changes over a cycle of nearly 26,000 years. Around 10,500 BCE, that constellation was not the bull of Taurus, as it was in the Pyramid Age, but the majestic lion, Leo. So in that remote era, on the spring equinox, an observer would have seen the sun rising directly between the paws of the lion-bodied Sphinx, perfectly framed against the backdrop of the constellation Leo. The earthly lion would have been greeting the celestial lion in a moment of cosmic alignment, so perfect it defies coincidence. Was the Sphinx originally built as a monumental marker for this age of Leo? Was its purpose to forever anchor a specific moment in the great celestial year, a moment the Egyptians later called Zep Tepi? This transforms the Sphinx from a silent guardian into a roaring announcement, a stone testament to a lost civilization that understood the slow dance of the stars on a scale we are only just beginning to comprehend. This geological clockwork points to a celestial key, the great cycle of precession. Our planet spins like a wobbly top, and this slight wobble in its axis causes the entire backdrop of stars to drift slowly over a vast period of 26,000 years. This means the constellation that appears behind the sun at the spring equinox changes over the millennia. Today, it rises in Pisces, and soon it will be in Aquarius. But if we rewind this cosmic clock, a staggering pattern emerges. Around 10,500 years before the Common Era, the sun on the spring equinox rose not in Taurus or Pisces, but squarely within the constellation of the lion, Leo. Now look back at the Sphinx. It is not a human-headed lion, It is a lion with a human head, its body unmistakably feline. The theory is breathtaking in its simplicity and its implications. In that distant epoch, an observer standing before the Sphinx at dawn on the first day of spring would have witnessed a spectacle of perfect alignment. The sun would have risen directly between the monument's two massive paws, perfectly framed against the starry background of its celestial counterpart, the constellation Leo. The earthly lion would have been greeting the heavenly lion in a moment of cosmic symmetry, so precise it cannot be dismissed as chance. This is the heart of the age of Leo hypothesis. It suggests the Sphinx was not merely aligned to the sun, but to a specific, grand cosmic era. What does this mean for its age? Mainstream Egyptology places its construction around 2,500 years before the Common Era, during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre. But if the Sphinx was built to mark the age of Leo, then its origins are pushed back by over 8,000 years, to a time when conventional history tells us only hunter-gatherers roamed the earth. This single idea shatters our traditional timeline. It forces us to consider the possibility of a lost chapter in human history, a precursor civilization with not only the advanced engineering skills to carve a monument of such scale, but the sophisticated astronomical knowledge to encode a 26,000-year cycle into stone. Were the ancient Egyptians not the original builders, but the inheritors and restorers of a legacy from a forgotten golden age? The Sphinx, then, becomes more than a statue. It is a time capsule, a roaring stone lion sent from a world before our own, holding a message about the true age and wisdom of humanity. Deep within the Great Pyramid's silent heart, two mysterious chambers hold an even greater secret. For over a century, explorers puzzled over the purpose of the four narrow shafts, barely wide enough for a person to crawl through, that angled upwards from the king's and queen's chambers. The simplest explanation was ventilation, a way to bring fresh air deep into the monument's core, and so they were labeled air shafts for decades. But this theory began to crumble as researchers realized the shafts were sealed from the outside world by stone blocks, making a practical function for the living seem unlikely. The true purpose of these tunnels was not for the breath of the living, but for the journey of the soul. It was a celestial roadmap carved in stone. Advanced robotic explorations finally allowed us to see where these shafts were aimed, and the results were stunning. The southern shaft emanating from the king's chamber was not pointed at a random patch of sky. It was precisely targeted, like a laser sight, at the three stars of Orion's belt. As we have seen, Orion was the celestial home of the god Osiris, the destination for the pharaoh's spirit. This shaft was a direct channel, a spiritual highway for the king's soul to ascend and join the gods in their eternal, undying constellation. But what of the northern shaft from the same chamber? Its alignment was just as deliberate, pointing unerringly toward the northern sky and the circumpolar stars. These were the stars that, to an ancient Egyptian observer, never set. They rotated endlessly around the North Star, forever visible, forever circling in a realm beyond death and decay. This was the land of the imperishable ones, the ultimate, unchanging destination for a divine king. The two shafts together formed a perfect cosmic compass. One guided the pharaoh's soul south to merge with Osiris in the cyclical drama of death and rebirth, while the other offered a northern path to a static, eternal existence among the undying stars. This was not an either-or choice, but a comprehensive spiritual navigation system, ensuring the king's immortality was secured on two separate celestial fronts. The pyramid was not a sealed tomb, but an open portal, its narrow stone channels serving as launch tubes for a pharaoh's final, glorious voyage into the afterlife. This same celestial precision was carved into the very foundations of the Great Pyramid. Its four sides are aligned to the four cardinal directions with an accuracy that defies simple explanation. The north-south axis of the Great Pyramid points to true north with an error of just 1/15 of a single degree. To understand how minuscule that deviation is, picture a perfect circle divided into 360 degrees. Now, split one of those degrees into 15 equal parts. The pyramid's builders were off by only one of those slivers. Modern engineers using GPS and laser theodolites would struggle to achieve such perfection on a structure of that scale. So how did an ancient civilization accomplish this 4,500 years ago? The secret likely lies not in complex machinery, but in a simple stake and a profound understanding of the sun's movement. One compelling theory involves a method known as the Indian circle technique. Imagine a vertical rod, called a gnomon, planted firmly in a wide, flat area of desert. As the sun moves across the sky, the tip of the rod's shadow traces a curving path on the ground. An astronomer would mark the exact position of that shadow's tip at different points throughout the day, particularly in the morning and afternoon. By connecting these points, they could create a perfect north-south line. The true genius was in observing the shadow's arc on the day of the autumn or spring equinox, when the sun rises due east and sets due west. On this day, the path of the shadow is symmetrical. By marking the shadow's length at two different times when it is exactly the same size, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, and then bisecting the angle between those two marks, they could find a perfect, unerring line pointing directly north. This method required no advanced technology, only meticulous observation and a deep grasp of spherical astronomy. They were using the planet's own rotation and its relationship with the sun as their ultimate measuring tool. This was not just construction, it was a form of high ritual, a way of physically anchoring their most sacred monument to the fundamental axes of the cosmos itself. This same sacred geometry was woven into the very layout of Karnak, a sprawling stone machine for watching the sky. Walking through its colossal gateways, you are not just moving through a temple, you are traversing a celestial calendar. The entire complex was engineered with a precise astronomical alignment that governed its design. Its main axis, a processional avenue lined with sphinxes, does not point randomly. It is oriented directly toward the point on the horizon where the sun sets on the shortest day of the year, the winter solstice. On this pivotal day, the dying rays of the sun would have flooded directly down the central corridor, illuminating the inner sanctum where the god Amun-Ra resided. This was not a passive observation, it was an active ritual. The architecture itself was ensuring that even as the sun reached its weakest point, its light was channeled directly into the heart of the temple, a symbolic reinforcement of the sun god's inevitable return and the pharaoh's role in maintaining that cosmic cycle. But the solstice alignment was just the beginning. Within this vast complex lies a more enigmatic structure, the Ach-Menu, or the festival hall of Thutmose III. This is not a hall of towering columns, but a labyrinth of smaller chambers and sanctuaries. Egyptologists believe one of its key functions was to serve as a specialized observatory for the most important star of all, Sirius. A specific corridor or window within the Ach-Menu may have been perfectly aligned to frame the heliacal rising of this brilliant star. Imagine the high priests gathered in the pre-dawn darkness within this stone chamber, their eyes fixed on a narrow slit in the wall aimed at the eastern horizon. They would wait in silence for that one magical moment when Sopdet, the star Sirius, would flare into view for the first time in 70 days. The moment its light pierced the specific opening in the temple wall, it would trigger the start of the new year and the Great Opet Festival, a time of renewal and divine confirmation of the pharaoh's power. This means the temple was not merely decorated with astronomical themes, it was a functional scientific instrument. Its walls and corridors were the fixed sights of a giant stone telescope, its alignment so precise they could predict and mark the most critical celestial events of the year. The priests of Karnak were not just holy men, they were master astronomers, using their architecture to literally capture the stars and harness their timing for the survival of the state. This precise alignment of temple and star reveals a deeper conflict at the heart of Egyptian timekeeping. They were simultaneously running two different calendars, and this created a fascinating celestial war fought over the very meaning of a year. On one side was the solar civil calendar, a simple and practical system of 12 months, each with 30 days, for a total of 365 days. This was the calendar that ran the government, collected taxes, and scheduled the harvest. Yet running parallel to this was the older, far more complex religious calendar. This was a lunar and stellar system, based on the 36 decan stars and the cycles of the moon, which only added up to about 360 days. The problem was stark. The solar year and the lunar year were constantly drifting apart, threatening to throw the sacred rituals,
which had to be performed at specific celestial moments, into complete chaos. The solution was both brilliant and deeply symbolic. To bridge the 5-day gap between the 360-day stellar year and the 365-day solar year, the Egyptians simply added 5 extra days at the very end. But these were not ordinary days. They were known as the epigomenal days, and they were considered to be outside of the regular flow of time. According to myth, these were the 5 sacred days on which the gods Osiris, Horus, Set, Isis, and Nephthys were born. So each year, time itself would pause, and the world would exist in a divine interlude, celebrating the birthdays of the very deities who govern the cosmos. This was more than a mathematical fix. It was a theological necessity, weaving the creation of the gods directly into the fabric of the calendar. But the conflict did not end there. The solar calendar of 365 days was still not perfectly aligned with the actual solar year, which is roughly 365 and a quarter days long. This meant the civil calendar slowly slipped backwards, losing about 1 day every 4 years against the true seasons and the stars. This is where the star Sirius became the ultimate timekeeper. The Egyptians observed that this wandering civil year would only realign perfectly with the solar year and the heliacal rising of Sirius after a long cycle of 1,461 years. This grand period is known as the Sothic cycle. Can you comprehend the scale of their observation? They were tracking a celestial clock that took nearly a millennium and a half to complete a single turn. This ongoing astronomical struggle reveals a civilization obsessed with harmony. They refuse to let their practical timekeeping divorce itself from the sacred rhythms of the universe, constantly using the unerring stars to correct the drift of their man-made calendars, forever trying to force the earthly and the heavenly back into sync. Herodotus stood in awe before a structure he called the Labyrinth, a complex so vast it dwarfed even the Great Pyramids. He described a sprawling stone maze of 3,000 rooms, half above ground and half below, a place he was certain no mortal hands could have built. Today, that colossal complex is gone, believed to lie buried beneath the sands near the Hawara Pyramid, a ghost haunting the edge of archaeological maps. But what if it was more than just a palace or an administrative center? What if the labyrinth was the ancient world's greatest center for cosmic learning, a university for the stars? The sheer scale of the place suggests a purpose far beyond bureaucracy. Imagine a priesthood needing to master the 36 decan stars, the complex movements of planets, and the slow precession of the equinoxes. Such advanced knowledge required a dedicated institution, a place of study, observation, and record-keeping on an unimaginable scale. The 3,000 rooms described by Herodotus could have been dormitories, libraries, lecture halls, and specialized chambers for tracking different celestial bodies. One chamber might have been aligned to the rising of Sirius, another to the moon's most extreme northern setting point, and yet another to track the wandering paths of Venus and Jupiter. The labyrinth may have been the beating heart of Egyptian astronomy, the place where priests transformed raw observations into the precise calendar systems and mythological narratives that governed a civilization. The most tantalizing possibility is what this complex might have contained at its center. Could there have been a master star chart, a 3-dimensional model of the heavens far more detailed than the Dendera Zodiac, mapping the entire known cosmos with a precision lost to history? This grand repository of knowledge would have been the ultimate expression of their belief that to understand the sky was to understand the mind of the gods. Its burial now represents one of history's greatest losses, a library of cosmic wisdom waiting silently beneath the sand for a day it might be found. The same stars that guided the pharaoh's soul to eternity also steered his ships through the darkness. While priests charted the heavens from stone temples, Egyptian sailors were navigating by those very lights on the unpredictable waters of the Nile and beyond. Their celestial maps were not carved in stone, but memorized in the minds of every pilot who dared to sail by night. For these mariners, the most crucial constellation was not Orion, but a familiar group of 7 bright stars we know as the Big Dipper. To the Egyptians, this was the constellation Mesokatu, the foreleg or the thigh. It was seen as the leg of a bull, a symbol of immense strength and stability, which was precisely its navigational value. Because of its position near the North Star, this constellation never dipped below the horizon. It rotated endlessly around the northern celestial pole, a fixed point in the turning sky. A sailor could always look north and find the thigh, using its slow, predictable circuit as a giant clock hand in the heavens to maintain his bearing. The star at the end of the Dipper's bowl, which we call Kachab, was particularly important as it circled most tightly around the pole, acting as a reliable marker of true north. This was not theoretical knowledge, it was a matter of survival. A ship laden with gold from Nubia, cedar from Byblos, or incense from Punt was an immense treasure floating on a dangerous river. Losing your way meant running aground on a sandbank, falling prey to pirates, or simply vanishing into the vastness of the Mediterranean. The circumpolar stars were the sailor's unwavering compass, a celestial guide that remained constant even when the shoreline was lost in fog or the darkness of a moonless night. This mastery of the stars transformed Egypt from a river-bound kingdom into a naval power. It allowed them to project military force along the coast, establish trade routes across the open sea, and bring back exotic goods and ideas that enriched their culture for millennia. The pharaoh's power truly did stretch from the imperishable stars in the northern sky to the distant horizons his ships could now reliably reach. High above the resting place of a royal advisor, a universe unfolds in painted plaster. The tomb of Senenmut, the most powerful man in Egypt next to Queen Hatshepsut herself, contains one of the most complete celestial maps ever discovered from the ancient world. This is not a grand temple ceiling for public veneration, but a deeply personal guide to the heavens, created for a single man's journey into the afterlife. Its existence shatters the notion that the stars were only the domain of secluded priests. Here, in the private tomb of a political figure, we find evidence that the highest echelons of the ruling class were fluent in the language of the cosmos. The ceiling is divided into two distinct panels, a northern and a southern sky, reflecting a sophisticated understanding of the hemispheric dome above. The northern panel is dominated by the familiar circumpolar stars, the so-called imperishable ones that never set. We see the Messicktu, the foreleg of the bull, our Big Dipper, alongside other constellations like a crocodile and a hippopotamus, guardians of this eternal realm. Directly opposite, the southern panel charts the decans, those 36 star groups that rose and set to mark the hours of the night and the weeks of the year. This was a practical star clock, the same system used by temple priests, now serving a government official. But the truly revolutionary elements are the wandering stars. The Egyptians knew the planets as the stars that know no rest, and they are meticulously plotted on Senenmut's ceiling, their unpredictable paths tracked and recorded with startling accuracy. Jupiter, Mars, and Saturn are all there, distinguished from the fixed stars by their own unique hieroglyphic symbols. This reveals an observational science that had moved beyond simple timekeeping into the realm of true planetary astronomy. The ceiling also features a detailed lunar calendar, correlating the phases of the moon with the stellar decans to create a complex, interlocking system of time. This was not just decoration, it was a functional, integrated cosmological database. Senenmut was a man of politics and administration, not a high priest. For his eternal soul to require such a detailed celestial map, he must have understood its meaning in life. This personal tomb artifact proves that astronomical knowledge was a pillar of elite education and a fundamental component of power. To rule in Egypt, one had to read the stars. This single misaligned pyramid disrupts the perfect order of the Egyptian sky. Far to the north of Giza, on the plateau of Abu Raiwash, sits the ruined structure of Pharaoh Djeddafur. While the Great Pyramid points to true north with an error of a tiny fraction of a degree, Djeddafur's pyramid is skewed by a massive half a degree. In the world of Egyptian engineering, where precision was a form of worship, this is not a minor mistake. It is a glaring anomaly. The traditional explanation is one of failure, that Djeddafur's reign was short and his construction crews rushed or incompetent, leaving behind an unfinished and poorly built monument. But what if this apparent error was not a mistake at all, but a deliberate choice? The pyramid's unique orientation forces us to consider a more intriguing possibility. Could its builders have aligned it not to the circumpolar stars, but to a different celestial target altogether? One compelling theory suggests the pyramid was aimed at the star Alpha Draconis, which was the North Star during Jedifer's era. Due to the slow precession of Earth's axis, the pole star changes over millennia. While our current North Star, Polaris, holds its position, Alpha Draconis occupied that sacred place in the sky around 2500 BC. Aligning to this specific star would have resulted in the exact half-degree deviation we see at Abu Rawash. This suggests the pyramid was a snapshot of the heavens, frozen in stone at a specific moment in the great cosmic cycle. It reveals a fluid and evolving astronomical practice, where different pharaohs, or different schools of priestly knowledge, may have chosen different celestial anchors for their eternal homes. Jedifer's pyramid then becomes a crucial piece of evidence. It shows that the rigid perfection of Giza was not the only way. The Egyptians were experimenting, adapting their sacred geometry to a shifting sky, proving their celestial knowledge was not a static dogma, but a living science, constantly observing and recalibrating their place in the universe. But the fixed stars were only half of the celestial story. Far more dramatic were the five wanderers, the planets that broke all the rules. The Egyptians called them the stars that know no rest, and they watched their strange, looping paths with a mixture of scientific curiosity and deep religious awe. Each of these restless stars was not a random light, but the physical embodiment of a powerful god, and their movements were the visible actions of these deities playing out their eternal dramas in the sky. The giant Jupiter was the mighty Horus, the god of kingship, a celestial pharaoh striding confidently across the heavens. The red glow of Mars was Horus of the horizon, a fierce and warlike aspect of the same god, a harbinger of conflict and strength. The slow, distant Saturn was known as Horus, bull of the sky, a patient and steady force representing endurance and stability. Then there was Venus, the most brilliant of them all. Its dramatic appearances as the morning and evening star were so distinct that the Egyptians saw them as two separate entities. As the morning star, it was the god Bennu, a herald of the sun associated with rebirth. As the evening star, it was the god Sa, the father of the gods. Mercury, the swift and elusive planet that never strayed far from the sun, was a trickster. They associated it with the chaotic god Seth, the murderer of Osiris, whose unpredictable motions mirrored his disruptive nature. But the most baffling behavior of all was retrograde motion. Several times a year, a planet would slow down in its path, stop, and then reverse course, traveling backwards against the backdrop of stars for weeks before stopping again and resuming its normal journey. Modern astronomy explains this as an optical illusion caused by Earth overtaking the slower outer planets in their orbits. But to an Egyptian priest, this was not an illusion, it was a celestial battle. When Mars, the Red Warrior, went retrograde, it was Horus of the horizon pausing in his advance, turning to face an unseen enemy, and engaging in a divine struggle. The backwards loop was the path of his celestial combat. This interpretation transformed the night sky from a static map into a living, breathing theater of mythology. Every unusual planetary alignment or period of retrograde motion was a headline from the realm of the gods, a direct message about the state of the cosmic order that the pharaoh and his priests had to decipher and respond to with the correct rituals. The universe was not a clockwork mechanism, it was a living, breathing, and often turbulent family of gods. While the planets danced their unpredictable paths, the Egyptians possessed a written guide to the entire cosmic order. Tucked away within the sealed tombs of pharaohs like Ramesses IV and Seti I, a sprawling text known as the Book of Nut served as the ultimate celestial instruction manual. Its full title, The Fundamentals of the Course of the Stars, reveals its practical purpose. This was not a book of vague myths, but a detailed cosmological treatise explaining the precise mechanics of the heavens. At the heart of this text is a vast, dominating image of the sky goddess Nut. Her star-studded body is stretched across the ceiling of the universe in a perfect arc, her fingers and toes touching the four cardinal points of the horizon. The sun god Ra is shown sailing in his boat along her body by day, and at dusk, he is swallowed by her mouth. The text then describes his perilous, 12-hour journey through her body during the night, to be born again from her womb at dawn. This was the grand, mythological framework for the solar cycle, but the Book of Nut goes far beyond this beautiful imagery. It provides a systematic breakdown of the stars, explicitly naming the 36 decans and describing their behavior. It explains why some stars are visible only at certain times of the year, and how their heliacal risings mark the passage of the hours and the weeks. It details the existence of the mysterious bass of the stars, their unseen, powerful spirits that influence the world. Imagine a priest, by torchlight, unrolling this papyrus scroll. He is not just reading a holy story, he is consulting a technical manual. The text gives him the knowledge to predict the appearance of Sopdet, to understand why the northern circumpolar stars never set, and to track the sun's changing path between the solstices. This was direct, functional knowledge, passed down through generations and reserved for the elite who needed to maintain the cosmic balance. The Book of Nut transforms our understanding of their astronomy. It proves their stargazing was a formal science, meticulously documented and systematized into a coherent theory of the universe, all framed within the enduring body of a goddess. Descending into the Osirian feels like stepping out of Egypt and into another world entirely. This mysterious underground structure, lying directly behind the magnificent temple of Seti, the first at Abydos, defies all conventional architectural styles. Its design is stark and megalithic, built from colossal blocks of stone that look more at home in Stonehenge than in an Egyptian temple complex. There are no colorful reliefs or hieroglyphic boasts from a pharaoh here. The atmosphere is one of raw, primordial power. Most Egyptologists believe this was the symbolic tomb of the god Osiris himself, the focal point of a cult that promised resurrection and eternal life. And the entire structure is a masterpiece of sacred engineering, designed to merge the celestial with the earthly in the most literal way possible. At its heart lies a central platform, an island surrounded by a channel of water that was fed directly by the Nile through a hidden subterranean canal. This was not just decorative. The Nile was the lifeblood of Egypt, and its annual flood was seen as the tears of Isis, bringing life back to the land just as she magically revived her murdered husband, Osiris. By channeling the Nile's very waters into this underground chamber, the priests were physically connecting the tomb of Osiris to the source of all fertility and rebirth. But the connection runs even deeper, straight up into the sky. The layout of the Osirian's chambers and its central island are thought to mirror the constellation of Orion, the celestial home of Osiris. Just as the soul of the pharaoh was believed to travel to Orion, this structure anchored that celestial reality to a specific, hallowed spot on Earth. Can you picture the rituals that might have taken place here? A high priest, representing the god Horus, might have stood on that central platform, surrounded by the dark, flowing waters symbolizing the Nile and the cosmic river of the Milky Way. As he performed the sacred rites of the Osiris myth, the murder and the reassembly of the god, he was not just reciting a story. He was reenacting the celestial cycle of death and rebirth, using the architecture itself to amplify the magic. The rising waters of the annual inundation would have slowly filled the chamber, submerging the symbolic tomb, only to recede and reveal it once more, a perfect earthly echo of Osiris's descent into the underworld and his triumphant return. This was astronomy you could touch, a ritual where the stars, the river, and stone worked in concert to guarantee that the cycle of life, death, and renewal would continue forever. This celestial order, so carefully woven into the stars and the state, was suddenly and violently shattered by a single pharaoh. Akhenaten launched a religious revolution that ripped the gods from the night sky. He declared that the entire pantheon, from Osiris to Ammon, was obsolete. In their place, he worshipped a single supreme deity, the Aten, represented not as a man or an animal, but as the physical, radiant disk of the sun itself. This was more than a theological shift, it was an astronomical cataclysm. For centuries, Egyptian priests had mastered the night, charting the decans and navigating by the circumpolar stars. Akhenaten forced their gaze into the blinding light of day, focusing all worship on the sun's overwhelming presence. He abandoned the ancient capital of Thebes and built an entirely new city, Amarna, from the desert sands up, as a living monument to his one god. The architecture of Amarna was a complete departure from tradition. Traditional temples were dark, enclosed spaces with towering columns and shadowy sanctuaries, designed to mimic the mysterious, starlit realm of the gods. The temples to the Aten were the exact opposite. They were vast, open-air courtyards, without roofs, their boundaries marked by long rows of altars. There were no dark inner rooms to hide the divine image. The entire complex was engineered to be flooded with undiluted sunlight from dawn until dusk. The most sacred rituals were now performed under the naked sky, directly under the gaze of the sun disk. This design ensured that the Aten's power was felt everywhere at once, an inescapable, all-encompassing force. The city itself was strategically laid out so that the sun's rays would penetrate along specific axes on significant dates, like the solstices, turning the entire urban plan into a giant solar observatory. For a brief, intense period, the complex star clocks and lunar calendars were cast aside. The state religion became a practice of pure solar astronomy, where the sun's daily journey was the only cycle that mattered. This was a stark, simplified cosmos, ruled by a single, glaring eye in the sky. But what does such a radical shift tell us? It reveals that the Egyptian understanding of the cosmos was not a single, unchanging dogma. It was a dynamic system that could be upended by a king's conviction, proving that their relationship with the heavens was the ultimate source of their power, and its disruption could bring an entire civilization to the brink of collapse. The sun god's power may have faded with Akhenaten's revolution, but the celestial knowledge cultivated on the Nile's banks was far too valuable to disappear. It simply found new minds to inhabit, traveling across the Mediterranean to plant the seeds of Western science. Long before the Parthenon was built, Greek thinkers like Thales and Pythagoras made the long journey to Egypt, not as conquerors, but as students. They sat at the feet of Egyptian priests, absorbing a legacy of cosmic observation that had been refined over 2,000 years. When they returned home, they carried with them the fundamental tools of astronomy. The Greeks did not invent the concept of a 365-day year. They adopted the streamlined solar calendar the Egyptians had used for centuries to govern their civilization. They did not arbitrarily decide to split the day into 24 equal parts. They inherited the system of nightly hours marked by the rising of the 36 decan stars, a method perfected in the temples of Karnak and the star clocks of Senenmut's tomb. Even the constellations that fill our star charts today bear a profound debt. The Greeks did not look at a scattered group of stars and see a heroic hunter entirely on their own. They took the Egyptian god Sa, the father of the gods, and reimagined him as the constellation Orion, preserving his essence while weaving him into their own myths. The bull of Taurus, the lion of Leo, the scales of Libra, all these foundational figures of the Greek zodiac have their origins in the celestial menagerie, painted on Egyptian tomb ceilings and carved into the Dendera stone. This transmission of knowledge was the greatest unsung export of ancient Egypt. The Greeks, with their talent for philosophy and geometry, built a magnificent intellectual structure upon this sturdy Egyptian foundation. The entire edifice of Western astronomy, from its units of time to its map of the heavens, was first laid out not under the clear skies of Athens, but under the watchful eyes of priests along the Nile, who understood that the stars were the true lords of time. The very tools that built our modern world are now unlocking secrets the ancients carved in stone. Satellite imagery, high above the Earth's atmosphere, scans the Egyptian desert with an unblinking eye, revealing alignments invisible from the ground. These orbital cameras have mapped the precise orientation of Karnak's main axis, confirming with cold, digital certainty that it targets the winter solstice sunset. The same technology shows that the processional way at Luxor Temple aligns with the rising of the star Sirius, proving the entire sacred landscape was a machine calibrated to the heavens. On the ground, archaeologists wielding GPS receivers can measure the positions of monuments with millimeter accuracy, verifying the impossible precision of the Great Pyramid's north-south alignment down to a fraction of a single degree. This is not guesswork anymore, it is demonstrable, empirical fact. But perhaps the most powerful tool is astronomical software like Stellarium, a digital time machine that lets us rewind the sky, With a few clicks, we can stand virtually in the desert on any night over the last 10,000 years. We can watch the stars of Orion's belt slide into perfect alignment with the Giza pyramids around 10,500 BCE, just as the age of Leo hypothesis suggests. We can see the northern shaft of the King's Chamber point directly at the pole star of its era, Alpha Draconis, and trace the path of Sirius as it would have appeared from a specific window in the Karnak Temple. These programs remove all doubt, transforming theories into visual, verifiable data. The grand claims of star clocks and celestial resurrection are no longer just poetic myths. They are geometric equations solved by silicon and light, a silent conversation between the programmers of today and the astronomer priests of a lost age. Science is finally providing the proof, demonstrating that what we once dismissed as primitive superstition was in fact a sophisticated, scientific understanding of the cosmos, written not on papyrus, but across the face of an entire nation. The sheer scale of their celestial vision is almost beyond our comprehension. From the three pyramids mirroring Orion's belt to the Sphinx roaring at the dawn of the age of Leo, their entire civilization was a conscious reflection of the cosmos. This was not magic, nor was it the work of alien visitors. It was the culmination of thousands of years of relentless, patient observation, a science written in stone and star charts by generations of priest astronomers who dedicated their lives to watching the sky. They transformed the slow wobble of the Earth and the predictable return of Sirius into the very foundation of their state, their religion, and their daily survival. In their profound quest to build monuments that would last for eternity, they achieved something even more remarkable. They left behind a map. It is a map not just of the Nile Valley, but of the heavens themselves, a celestial blueprint encoded in the alignment of a pyramid, the gaze of a statue, and the precise layout of a temple. So the next time you look up at the night sky, remember that you are seeing the same stars that guided the pharaohs. What other secrets do you think are still hidden, waiting to be rediscovered in the silent stones of Egypt? Share your thoughts on these ancient celestial mysteries in the comments below, and subscribe to join us on our next journey into the deep past.